Let's assemble Poppy. This is such a fun pattern. All right, so we have our body, we have two flippers, we have 2 feet and a tassel and a cowl, which I do not have pictured here. So the cowl's easy to assemble because it's just putting it on Poppy's neck. Now, I want to point out that my working sample for the tutorial is a very black yarn, but the yarn that I suggest in the pattern is Vengeance by Leading Men Fiber Arts. So all of these colors are Leading Men except for this black. This is the color I actually recommend, and can you see the difference in how black this yarn is? I can see my stitches on the Vengeance. I cannot see my stitches on this, and it was a really difficult knit. However, my cat got to the leftovers, which I would normally be using for the tutorial videos. I normally knit one prototype and then, or at least one prototype, and then do videos, but my cat kiboshed that plan. And so here we have a very good demonstration on how not all black yarns are equal. Now, I'm not saying this is a black yarn, but Poppy reads as a penguin visually and is a great looking penguin. However, Poppy is also much friendlier to knitting, where you'd need to be picking up stitches or counting rows since decreases and things like that. So I really encourage you to find something. Vengeance is a marvelous color from Leading Men Fiber Arts. It's kind of a purpley gray. I just think it's fantastic. So this is going to be a little hard to see, and I'm going to do my best with the light ratings on the camera as I show you what we're doing. First thing we're going to do is we're going to attach our flippers. We have knit 2 of them because that's how penguins and other birds work. They have 2 wings. So the thing to do is to place it in the narrow part of your neck, sort of where the shoulder meets the head, and put it just at the edge of the black. Don't do it at the narrowest part because you will fill it up. Do it just below that narrowest part, and so that the flipper edge is right against the edge of. So we're just going to use whip stitch. So I'm going to go into the fabric of the body, and then I'm going to go through both layers of the wing, making sure that that whip stitch goes up and onto the top of the wing rather than to the side. And then I'm going to repeat again and again into the body, through both layers of the wing. And it is amazing how much harder this is with this sample than the one I finished for the Vengeance yarn. Yeah, find yourself a charcoal. Like I said, Vengeance is one of my favorite yarns in this kind of not quite black category. I think especially if you're going to be, not for Poppy per se, but if you're going to be wearing it, I think it's super flattering for skin tones. Not that I'm not sort of a gothy black person. My high school self would have loved this black. All right, so once we've done all of the whip stitch across, if this is a toy, do your whip stitch really close, really frequent. Make sure that you've got that really securely attached. I'm going to go underneath my wing. I'm going to create a loop by going through the fabric of the wing, then going through that, so I'm going through, that made a loop, and I'm going to go through that loop twice. Hold it nice and tight up against there, get it good. Stick it through the body, and I'm going to pull taut and snip right close to the fabric, and because we pulled taut, the end will disappear inside. So that is wing number 1. Do the same thing on the other side. Next up are the feet, which are a little tricky to demonstrate on this version. We've got a very small garter ridge purl bump kind of area right before we started our decreases. However, it's very difficult to see on this one. So if I could bring up this version of Poppy, hopefully you can see here, right where we picked up stitches and then worked the decreases. And what I've done is I've attached Poppy's feet roughly halfway between the center of that and that ridge. So the attachment point here is roughly halfway between these 2 points. The other thing I did was I didn't do them parallel. They're both sort of splayed out, like as though I was a hand of a clock pointing at 2 numbers, like 11 and 1. So they're not like this, they're like this. Always, when you are attaching something, make sure that you take a moment to say, is this the way I want it to be? So there's always a moment where you can attach it, maybe even add, grab some of your needles, attach it, stand it up, see what you think. Is that where I want it? Is that not where I want it? I would suggest roughly 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock on a clock if you were viewing from above. One quick note, the bind off side, or the bind off of Poppy, means that one side of this will have a purl ridge on the back, or on the right below the bind off, and the other side will not have that, and we'll just have this layer of V-stitches from the bind off laying down. I personally like this side to be up, the more visible side, but if you prefer the bumpy purl side, that's fine. The feet are nearly identical aside from that little cast off area. So you decide. So I'm going to go about halfway. We want them to stick out enough when Poppy is standing that the 3 points of the web kind of stick out and are obvious, which is difficult to show with the above camera. So hopefully you are getting the sense of what I mean from this. We want them to be far enough forward that we see that they are webbed and worth the work we put into them, but not so far forward that they aren't well attached or look kind of funny, I guess would be the word. It's really up to you. It could be a stylistic thing, like maybe you really like that look. I want it just back a little more. And then we're just going to use whip stitch again. And whip stitch is just going into one fabric, the other fabric, and then whipping around is where that comes from. It's nothing fancy or intimidating that you need to know about this stitch. So into the body, into the foot, and making sure your placement is roughly what you want. Remember, before you tie a knot and cut it, it's always a good chance to check your placement. Anytime you're doing two things, it's even better to wait until both are attached before you kind of finalize everything. So let's do that. One thing you will notice is this is not very attached. This is very flexible. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come up about where we started to widen the foot, and we're just going to tack it down. So go through the fabric, not in an identical spot where you came up, or you'll just undo that, go down and come back up and just kind of stitch it down to that point. If this is a toy, please do this multiple times and maybe even a little higher as well. You want that foot to be nice and stable for toys. All right, to tie knots, as I showed you before on the wing, but maybe was a little difficult to see, so we'll do it again in the orange area here. I'm going to go under the leg of a stitch, and that makes a loop. You can see that there. Then I go through that loop twice. Once, twice, grab with my thumbnail and the pad of my finger, pushing it down towards the fabric while at the same time pulling on the needle end to get that knot tight, but also as close to the surface as possible. And then just plunge the needle through, and you can even zigzag it back and forth through the flipper a few times if you'd like. Cut that off. Do the same thing with the second foot. All right, 2 legs, 2 wings. Now we need a tassel. Tassels are great to attach because they have 2 ends. And so what we can do is thread one end onto your yarn needle, go into the hat top. Now go through your tassel and do that again. So come down, go left to right with this one, through the hat top, go back through the tassel, take that off the needle, then grab the second one. Now we're going to do the same thing but in the opposite direction. So I'm going to go left to right through the hat top. back through the the tassel, back through the hat top. And now these two are right here close by. So I'm actually going to tie a knot in them. Depending on how confident you feel about your knot tying skills, you can also insert both of these, come out in the back of Poppy and do your knot tying sort of away from camera, as it were, where people are least likely to be looking when looking at Poppy. Always hide your dubious bits at the back, right? All right, so there are my double knotted ends. Now I'm going to thread them on my yarn needle. If you can do them both at once, fantastic, because then it's just one pass with the needle. Put those into the hat and come out somewhere. Tug on them till the ends pop out. There's one end. There's my other. Pull taut and snip. And now straighten the hat out again. And now you have your adorable little pop on Poppy, which is in fact where her name came from. And lastly, with your garter cowl, just place that over your neck. This is something that my test knitters, sometimes their garter stitch wasn't tight enough, that it was sort of really wide and floppy. So just make sure that your cowl looks good on your penguin, and if you need to, go down a needle size, because we definitely want Poppy to look warm and fashionable. I hope this video helped. I hope you enjoyed knitting Poppy, and I will be designing more penguins and having lots more fun. If this was your first time doing intarsia, good for you. I love it when knitters don't let themselves get intimidated by new techniques. You can do anything if you can knit and purl. Happy knitting.